Okay, so we're going to start the new chapter in Hilchas Yesodei Hatorah. We've discussed several different subjects in Hilchas Yesodei HaTorah. The Rambam in the 7th chapter veers to the subject of prophecy. And he starts off the 7th chapter by discussing what the qualifications are for you prophets at home that want to get into the business. So it's not for everyone. And that's why the Rambam gives specific details and criteria of what it takes to be a Navi. Okay? So the Rambam starts off by saying, Yesodei hadas leida shaha'el menabe es b'nei ha'adam. Okay? He says, first of all, and I think we know this from the Yud Gimel Ikarim, right, where we have this concept of a Navi, that there are selected people throughout the generations that are labeled as Nevi'im, and their job is to carry out the word of God. Okay, that's basic, right, Nevi'us 101. And he actually calls it a Yesod. It's one of our foundations, and in fact, that is true, because, as we mentioned, we have to believe that as one of the 13 fundamental principles, that there is this concept that God gives over his word to Nevi'im. Okay? That's first of all. Now, the question is, so who is deemed worthy to be called a Navi? So the Rambam says, Vein hanavuah chala ela al chacham gadol b'chachma. The first criteria is a chacham. Okay, one of those words that has many, many meanings. Okay, but we'll just call him a chacham for simplicity's sake. Okay, gibor b'midosav, someone who is a gibor. V'lo yehei yitzro miskaber alav b'dvar ba'olam elohu miskaber b'daito al yitzro tamid, and someone who does not give into his yetzer. Okay, that is, he seems to be listing three criteria. Okay, and like Chacham, Gibor, and someone who does not give into his Yetzer. Okay, but he rules his Yetzer. Okay, V'hu Baldeya Rechava Nechona Ad Ma'od. Okay, and he is a Baldeya. He's very, very intelligent. Okay, expansive mind. Adam Shehu Mumula B'chol Hamidas Ha'elu Shalom Begufo. This is what we call someone who is Shalem. Now, the commentators all jump, the Kesef Mishnah, the Lechem Mishnah, all jump on the Rambam because, as we know, the Rambam gets most, if not all, of his information from the Talmud Bavli. And if you remember, there's a very famous Gemara in Nedarim Lamed Ches that lists the criteria, Chacham Gibor, but it also lists Ashir, someone who's rich. And if you remember, we learned them all from Moshe. Moshe had those three characteristics. By the way, how do we know that Moshe was rich? Has anyone checked his stock portfolio lately? It says
from the Luchos.
Right. It says it says psolacha, right? From the psoles of the Luchos, whatever that means, he was able to keep the shards of the Luchos that he engraved, and he sold them and made a lot of money. Okay.
Another explanation is the Aleph of Vayikra.
Excuse me?
Another explanation
is
the extra ink from the Aleph of Vayikra.
Oh, that I didn't hear. Okay. So he saved money.
Where's that one from? I got all that extra ink. I never did anything with it.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have a local scribe here.
So it says that he smeared it on his face, and that's how his face was shining. So,
okay.
Anyway, not from.
All right. These are Medrashim. Obviously, the Luchos, though, is actually a passage from the Talmud Bavli. It appears twice. But anyway, so there's discussion in the commentators over here. The like I said, the Kesef Mishnah that wants to know why the Rambam does not talk about Ashir, and there's another Gemara that discusses Anav, right? The Rambam doesn't bring Anav, so the Kesef Mishnah makes a distinction between, well, is he a Navi, a permanent Navi versus a part-time Navi? Okay, be that as it may, we'll just learn the Rambam over here. So he says, so he has to be shalem begufo, right? That reminds me of the Rashi from last week's parsha, shalem begufo, shalem b'mamono, right? So he has to be complete, and these attributes complete the person. K'sheyikanes lepardes v'yamashech ba'osan ha'inyanim ha'gedolim ha'rachokim. Right? He has to be almost armed with these three characteristics when he enters the Pardes. Now it's interesting. The Rambam calls it the Pardes. We know that the Rambam himself used this word Pardes earlier. Remember when? In the fourth chapter, I believe, when he spoke about Ein Dorshin, right? Where you're not allowed to talk about Maisa Merkava. And he referenced the Gemara in Chagiga, Yodalit or so, where it talks about the Tanaim Arba Unichnasu Lepardes, right? That's the esoteric and the underworld of the Agadic sections, and that's what it's called. It's called the Pardes. So here, it sounds like he's using the same word that a Navi, when he's about to get his Nevuah, he goes into this kind of a trance. All right. And the Rambam is actually going to discuss what this trance is made of. Right? What's going on? So here he calls it the word Pardes, v'yamashach ba'osan ha'inyanim ha'gedolim ha'rachokim, v'tihelo dea nechona. He has to have the right, he has to have the right cup, as they say. Lahavin ulahasig, to understand what he's about to get into. V'hu miskadesh v'holech uporesh midarke klal ha'am ha'holchem b'machshake hazman. And this person has to single-handedly go out of his way and not be like the rest of the people, right? That are bound by, that are bound by time. He's different. He has to devote his entire being to accepting the word of God. He has to get off of his fantasy football team, right, and disregard all of the various, olam hazeh things that we deal with every day. Okay, he's in a special zone. Okay, that's what this Navi is all about. He's in a zone, and he can't be sidetracked with anything else. Right? No machshava betelim v'lo mahavle hazman detachbulosav. He can't deal with any of the earth of the worldly matters that most people have to deal with. Elodaito penuya tamid lamaila kishura tachas hakise. Wow, the way the Rambam describes, right, the preparation to accept Nevuah is pretty frightening, right? He has to have his mind completely free under the Kisei HaKavod to understand these Tzuros HaKadoshos HaTahoros, to understand the message he's going to get and how it connects to these images, these heavenly images. Umistakel b'chachmoso shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kula mitzur rishona ad tabor haaretz v'yodea mehen gadlo. Wow. So he basically is in like this zone, like we said, where he's elevated, and umiyad ruach hakodesh shora alav. And once he is, as we said, in this zone where he's separated from everything else, and his head is in the heavens, then, and only then, he will have that spirit rest on him. Ubeisha tanuach alav haruach, and when he gets this nevuah, okay, titarev nafsho b'malos hamalachim. He is almost in the arms of the angels, right? He's in the angel category. Hanikraim ishim, that are called ishim. So the Rambam here is alluding to, if you remember, earlier he described the different levels of malachim, right? Remember the top level, closest to God, were the Yofanim and the Srafim. And then as you make your way down lower to earth, the layer closest, remember we described it as like a 7-layer cake? So the layer that's closest to earth, those malachim are called ishim. And if you remember, the Rambam called them ishim because they have the word ish in them, right? Man. Okay? So they're closest to man. All right? So that's what this person is almost on the level of. He's almost on the level of a malach. V'yehepech le'ish acher. And once he accepts the nevuah, he's like a new man. He's a new person. By the way, we keep on saying ish. There were neviot also. So for the women out there, don't feel bad. There were, I believe the list is there were 42 neviim and 7 neviot. I think that's what the Gemara in Psachim
Name the
says.
7. Name the 7. Let's go. The Gemara says 7. Let's
Right.
hear
I'm
'em.
only gonna tell you Huldah. That's
Sarah,
it.
Devorah, Abigail, Huldah,
Talia, one of those.
Esther.
Esther.
Esther, of course. So that's 5. It's like the 7 lords.
It's okay. All right. We don't have that much time left. We'll have a class on it next Tuesday night, maybe. Because there's actually a Rashi over there, and it's a machlokas. Some names are out. I think there's a Gra over there that discusses. There's a machlokas about the Nevi'im, who made the list and who didn't. So it's not so clear of the 48 or 42. So as usual, nothing is clear. But anyway, so getting back to the Rambam, he says, yeah, you're a new man. V'yavin bedaito she'ein kamos shahaya. He can't be like his old person. Right? He's a new person. Okay. He's a new man from what he previously was, and he will rise. He will be nis'aleh. He will rise above the level of the other chachamim. Kamosha Ne'amar, as the pasuk says in Shaul, right? This is the pasuk when I think this is in Shmuel Aleph. When they picked Shaul, it says V'hisnabita imam v'nehapachta le'ish acher. Right? So Shmuel told Shaul when he was picking Shaul, he said that you will be a navi and you will nehapach. You will change. You will turn around and you will be a completely different person. So this is not something to be taken lightly. Okay, there's no Ramban in 2 minutes, right? So I'll use that to my advantage. Hanaviim ma'alot hein. So just like there's rankings amongst everything today, right? The top 20, the top 10, right? We love ranking things. So too, there are ranks and levels amongst Nevi'im. Okay? Kamoshiyesh b'chachma gachacham gadol mechavero. Just like you have one person smarter than the others, right? We have different classes, we have different this, we have different that. Today, everything is based on your intelligence. So too, we have rankings when it comes to one Navi being greater than the other Navi. And now the Rambam makes a statement, V'chulan ein ro in ma'eh ha'nevuah ela b'chalom u'b'chezyon laila. This should be its own halacha, because aside from Moshe, he was only, right, the pasuk says panim al panim. Every other Navi only got his prophecy either through a dream or after he was sleeping or in some kind of awkward state. He wasn't conscious. That's the key word over here. He was not conscious. Okay? Right? Or after he was put to sleep. Shenamar b'mareh elav, the pasuk in Baloscha says This is when we were extolling the virtues of Moshe Rabbeinu, right? How great he was. It says, Bamare elav esvada, b'chalom adaber bo. Okay, I make myself known to him, and I speak to him in a dream. That's when it comes to everyone else. But when it says, but Moshe, I speak peh el peh. The kulanche kishemis nabin, and when the Navi starts to prophesize, Evrehen mizdazin, they start to tremble, their body trembles. The koach haguf kashal, they become physically, not just mentally, but they become physically weak. The eshtonosehen mistarfos, and they lose all of their five senses, almost like they're not functioning. There's like some kind of lahavdil. You want to compare this to like a horror movie, like when you're doing an exorcism and you lose like yourself, right? Remember that scene where that girl loses herself and she can't, right? You're not functioning normally. Okay, you lose all senses, and what's left? The tishaer hadas penuya lahavin mashatire, and all you have left is just your mind to think and to understand what you see. Avraham, like it says in Avraham, v'hinei ema chashecha gedol nofelas alav. Okay, there was a great ema. Ema is fear, right? Of fear came onto him. Daniel, like the pasuk says in Daniel, okay, my hod, my facial expression changed, right? Lamashchit, in a negative way, meaning I look different, and I have no more koach. I just want to end on, I heard a very, very long time ago, if you remember the Gemara in Bava Metzia, where it talks about Reish Lakish, right? So he jumped into the river, he saw Rav Yochanan, he got all excited. And at the end of the day, when he converted over there, it said that he had to be taken out of the water because he didn't have the koach anymore. Because once you accept Torah, you physically become weak, and that's an explanation of the Gemara why he couldn't even get out of the Yarden. Why he couldn't get out of the river? He jumped in when he wasn't, when he was still in his bad phase. But when he turned into his good phase, he physically became weak, and that's why he couldn't get out of the water. So that's alluded to in the Rambam over here, that when you accept Torah and God, you physically, not just mentally, but you physically become weak, as if something overtakes you and you have no more power. So we'll stop there for tonight.
A nightmare or a daydream.